The autonomic nervous system is part of the overall nervous system, or we can just say part of the nervous system. It is structurally distinct and it has two branches. So let's look at physically where it is. Then let's talk about what it does and how what it does compares to what other parts of the nervous system do. So here is a model of the nervous system, and there is, at least for me, quite a bit going on. There are tons of nerves running everywhere, and the autonomic nervous system is some of these nerves. So if we look along the spine here, I can add in a skeleton, we can see a bit more. Yeah, maybe we're more familiar with this look. Here, this is part of the autonomic nervous system. It is part of the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, and it runs along the spine. For example, this here is not part of the autonomic nervous system. This is part of the somatosensory nervous system. So we'll talk about that here in a second. And if we add in the organs, it's going to be helpful for us to see also, or some of the digestive organs. This will be helpful for us to see where some of the parasympathetic nervous system is. So if we look right here along the esophagus, we have the esophageal plexus nerve, which is part of the cranial nerve 10, also known as the vagus nerve, which I would guess is the most famous nerve in the body and is most probably the most famous nerve of the autonomic nervous system. This is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so let's just quickly look at a model that simplifies this because it's kind of hard to tell what is going on here. And actually before that, let's bring the skeleton back up because we need to look at the spine. We have 7 vertebrae up here in the cervical spine, C1 to C7 here. And then the thoracic spine has 12 vertebrae, T1 to T12, and then the lumbar spine starts here. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because if we look at a much simpler model that shows the 2 branches of the autonomic nervous system, we can see that the parasympathetic nervous system, the one that stimulates rest and digest, is innervated starting from the cranium and the sacrum, while the sympathetic system is innervated from the thoracic spine and then goes and touches different organs. So we'll get into exactly how the communication is happening here, how information is being received and then sent out. But before that, let's talk a little bit about what this nervous system is doing compared to what other parts of the nervous system are doing. We have the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system, which are the nerves that are sensing, getting information, and then sending information to the spinal cord and the brain. The peripheral nervous system splits up into the somatosensory, which is involved in sensing and moving. So this is any movement that's happening like this, or any light you're taking in, or any touch you're sensing. This is the somatosensory nervous system. And you'll notice I'm describing information coming in from the outside world and then motor function so that the organism can move within the world. The somatosensory system also takes in information from the inner world, like proprioception. So the somatosensory system is sensing a joint, is sensing muscle movement, it is sensing tension on tendons. So there is sensing of the internal world of the somatosensory system, similar to the autonomic nervous system. But the autonomic nervous system is sensing stuff like blood pressure levels or pH balance in certain parts of the body, or it is sensing the heart rate. A simplistic way to think about it that is pretty accurate in my opinion is that the somatosensory system is about how the organism interacts with the outside world, while the autonomic nervous system is about regulating the internal state of the organism. The parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest system. It puts us in that rest and digest state, and that is done through stimulating certain organs and stimulating, for example, the digestive system, slowing down the heart, and this is about allocating more resources to rest and digest. So contrast this with the sympathetic system and going into that sympathetic state where that is more active. That is about allocating resources internally so that the body can be ready to act in a very responsive way to what's going on in the external environment, usually. So the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic, but in this case, I'm describing what the sympathetic nervous system has a very clear effect on the somatosensory system, on the muscles and the tension of the muscles. So they're related, and obviously they're connected to each other because the entire body is connected. But here we can start to distinguish what their functions are and how they differ from each other. Here's another model that is showing again that the parasympathetic is stemming from the cranium and attaching to certain organs, and also the sacrum and attaching to certain organs, while the sympathetic nervous system is running along the vertebrae and then attaching to some of the same organs. So for example, we see the sympathetic can accelerate heartbeat while the parasympathetic can slow it down, and also with pupil dilation or pupil constricting. And then, for example, the sympathetic nervous system inhibiting salivation and inhibiting digestive processes because that takes energy, and the body, when it is activating the sympathetic nervous system, is under the impression that, hey, we need to allocate resources into mobilizing the body, not into taking care of what's going on inside here. We are a system that is operating and then needs maintenance, and this is why it's important to learn what the sympathetic state is, learn what the parasympathetic state is, and to be able to access that parasympathetic state for yourself, or to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm using the term state and system because the state more describes our experience when that system is active, but to be very accurate, we're talking about physical structures sending information to organs. So how is that information sent? And let's compare that to the somatosensory system too. Touch is a good example. If you just touch yourself here, you can sense that, or anywhere you can sense that. Maybe you can sense your weight in your chair or on your feet, whatever you're doing right now, lying on the ground. That is physical manipulation in sensory nerves that then goes into your spine and up into your brain, and you experience as the subjective experience of touch. The sensory pathway, so if we look back at the model of the nervous system, and we don't need the digestive system anymore, within these bundles here, inside here, information is going in two directions. It is going from what I just described of touch, and that is called the afferent pathway, the sensing pathway. And then the efferent pathway is motor function. And the ability to do that is in these same veins here. I mean, they're not veins, but they look like veins. So that is how the somatosensory system works. The terms afferent, efferent, ferent, I wish they were less similar because I always get confused. But efferent is motor function, where it sends signals from the central nervous system and then fires something, fires motor function, and afferent is sensing. So similarly to that, the autonomic nervous system has the same thing going on, but it is also a little bit different because the autonomic nervous system is rigged up to organs, the internal organs, and it's rigged up to sense things like blood pressure and heart rate, and then to adjust accordingly to what it's sensing there. Let's use the parasympathetic nervous system as an example to see how information is sent from the spinal cord to certain organs in the body. And here we can see that there is a nerve body, that electrical information is then sent, and then there is a synapse that happens between the nerves where acetylcholine is released. And this is a neurotransmitter that then synapses eventually with the target organ. There's a detail here about it being a 2-neuron system, so which is different than the somatosensory system. I won't go into too many details about that, but just for future reference, we can see here that there is a signal coming from the spine and then a ganglia here, several ganglia, ganglion, which are clusters of neurons that are then sending information to the organs. And this is more prominent in the sympathetic system. The reason why this is like this is because then we can more cohesively get a bunch of the body to operate at the same time. So we can get like the heart rate up, we can get adrenaline pumping, we can get the pupils dilated, we can get saliva stopped all at the same time by like sending the information here and then dispersing it from there. And then it also helps like not overdo it. So there can be regulation happening at each of the ganglion to make sure we're not overstimulating the heart, for example. And this is different. The somatosensory system does not have this 2-neuron configuration. So yeah, the way that this works is through electrical signals within the nerves themselves, and then a synapse, a neurotransmitter synapse that sends information. This is a really simple overview, but this is what's happening in you all the time. Even now, a lot of your experience, and you can tune into it and listen to it, are the functions that are happening because of these physical systems that exist in your body. If you're interested in doing practices where we look at this information that I've just presented, for example, and then do a practice that embodies it, look at joining the community. There is a free trial option, so you can try out a couple different classes or more and see what effect this has on how you perceive yourself and how for example, your different branches of the autonomic nervous system can regulate. What happens when you become more familiar with who you are, what you are, based on studying yourself in this way, like we just did, and then studying yourself from that first person perspective. If you're interested in the evolution of the nervous system, I have a video on that. Thank you for taking all this interest in yourself, and I will see you next time. Bye.